Hi everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted to make a better life and do great things, then do we have the Spartan Way show for you. Today I'll be talking with Joe De Sena, serial entrepreneur, ultra-endurance athlete, founder of the Spartan Race Series, and the author of a Take No Prisoners Inspiring Look at Life, the Spartan Way. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about how to be better, think better, and live a limitless life. That, plus we'll talk about Joe the Ear, marathon monks, chugging olive oil and its consequences. Oh no. Red barns in Vermont, hallucinating hamburgers, going blind in Japan, the power of the transcendence run, and what in the world ski goggles and eggplant parmesan have to do with anything. Gotcha.
You covered it all.
So welcome to the show, Joe. Are you ready to shine?
Let's shine.
Woohoo! Well, I've had several opportunities to read your book, so I pulled out the best. Before we dive right into things, though, did you really work for the mafia?
I did not bury bodies, but I did a lot of work for those folks. Yeah, I grew up in a neighborhood that was, for whatever reason, the capital of organized crime. And my neighbor, Joe the Ear, you mentioned him, was the big boss, and he took a liking to me. And he had me come over and clean a swimming pool. And at a very young age, pre-teens, taught me a ton of lessons. And then from there, it just led to a bigger and bigger business, which ultimately I had 700 customers, 60 to 70% of them were those guys.
What did you say is the most important lesson that you learned from Joe? Because on the one side, they're burying the bodies. On the other side, he had a very strong work ethic, didn't he?
He had a very strong work ethic. Most of the folks in that neighborhood did, even if they were doing the wrong thing. They hustled, they were awake, 24/7, always angling, always trying to come up with something, or making sure they didn't end up buried in the backyard. And I would say it was a couple of things. I don't know if I could just nail down one. One that really gets me excited every day that I want to transfer to my kids was, if you're supposed to be somewhere at 8 a.m., make sure you're there at 7:45. Now, clearly for this interview, I failed that, and he'd probably kill me. But
hey, you're still alive and kicking, so we're good.
Other ones were, if you're going to do the job, go above and beyond. Never ask for money. Let it come to you when it's supposed to. Those guys, at least this guy, was really particular about that. And I would say those are the three big ones. Like, customer's always right. And believe it or not, we're on this planet to do good. Now, think about the irony of learning that from him.
Well, it means that everybody has their own value set, their own rule set. But at the end of the day, everybody has to believe that they're trying to do the best that they can.
I guess that's what gets them through the day, right?
Absolutely. There's another thing that struck me that he taught you as well, and that's a C word, commitment.
Yeah, I was pretty committed. I mean, if you were wishy-washy, you didn't last very long in this neighborhood. So you committed like a pit bull. You committed like Caesar when he burned the boats when they arrived in the Nordics, right? So I think every day we burn the boats.
Now, can you tell us about your parents growing up? And your dad, I guess, was a bit of a workaholic maniac?
I wouldn't say. I would think he would win the Grammy, and the Oscar. My father worked 24/7. There was no vacation. He never shut off. And I could remember as a young person waking up in the middle of the night, going upstairs. He was awake. He was on the phone. He was doing stuff. 5 a.m. he would dial his employees who he just had go to sleep because he just dropped them off, 4 hours ago. And the joke was that their hair was still wet because when they got home, they took a shower, laid in bed. He woke them up and they wake up with a wet head. So he never stopped. Problem with that, because I don't really see a problem with it, was because I definitely got that gene, is he didn't take care of himself. He didn't eat healthy. He didn't work out. It was just work and soda and donuts and garbage. Wasn't a particularly overweight guy, but it eventually took its toll in diabetes and ultimately killed him. So I'm driven by those same things, and I hate when I see the lack of oomph or enthusiasm or passion or persistence and resilience in people. because that's what I was surrounded by. But it just drives me nuts. I mean, I don't think there's anything that drives me more nuts than that. But so I like that. But you got to put yourself in the best position to win. And I've convinced myself that it's, eating healthy food and working out. By the way, there's no guarantee with that we're going to escape, right? Nobody gets out alive, but at least it helps you get around the track a little faster.
Speaking about getting around the track, and thanks for sharing on that, there's your mom in something called the Transcendence Run that I had to look up what this thing is, and it's crazier than any race out there today, even the Spartan races, I'd argue.
Yeah, it's a crazy one. So at a young age, my mother brought me and my sister to see this thing called the Transcendence Run. It takes place in Queens, still exists today. When we saw it, I don't even think it was called the Transcendence Run. It was very early days. And it's 3,100 miles around a 1 mile city block. So you just literally do loops for 3,100 miles. And so, 7, 8 people sign up for this thing a year. Nobody really wants to do it. But what it does to a young person, what it did for me, what it did for my sister, was it showed us the power of the mind, how far somebody could push.
And that's exactly, I was showing you this video before the start today of me running up the side of a mountain because we had to delay the interview for a few hours. And I've got all these titanium parts and shouldn't be able to do it. But if you can go there in the mind, chances are you can go there in the body. We are not limited by what a doctor or an expert tells us, are we?
We are not limited. The mind is much more powerful than the body. I mean, I learned that. I actually learned it skiing, believe it or not. I learned, obviously, seeing those folks run around 3,100 miles. But I remember a coach saying to me in skiing, I was probably, I don't know, 11, 12, and I was trying to do a 360.
Yeah.
And he said, the skis will follow your head. Now, he didn't mean exactly what you and I are talking about, but that's the way I interpreted it. And so it was like, oh, okay, if I could convince myself to do something, everything will just follow your head. And voila, I landed at 360. And so it was set in stone that I just got to put my mind to things, and they happen.
Woo-hoo. So speaking about the body following the head, you went from pools, what is it, like 750 employees. You've got this massive business. You said there's no way I'd want to go into something like Wall Street. And then somebody convinced you on it and the mind went there. What happened?
Yeah, so I was a big man on campus in the sense that in the neighborhood I had all these customers. They were big, important, respected people that killed people for a living. And so as ridiculous as it sounds, if you're listening to this, we're all products of our environment. And so that was my environment. If I lived in a place where there were top marathoners and they had Mercedes, we would all aspire to be marathoners, but that's not who I lived around. I lived around people who did other things for a living, right? So you're aspiring to do that. And
did you aspire to work for them in that capacity?
I aspired to be one of them. I don't think there was anybody my age growing up there that didn't want to be one of them. Yeah. I mean, it meant you arrived. That was the symbol of success, right? So just watch A Bronx Tale for real understanding of that, because it tells a story. And then my mother moves us to Ithaca. My parents get divorced, and in Ithaca, she is hoping to be more accepted because she's into vegan, yoga, meditation, all this crackpot, witchery, crunchy stuff that my sister and I want nothing to do with.
I'm going to have to say cool mom, though. Very, very cool mom.
Oh, 1,000%. But that's today. That's after Yoga Journal exists and Whole Foods, right? So she was right. We were wrong. But she moves to Ithaca, and in Ithaca, they're supposed to be more accepting because it's a college town. And I happened to meet this Italian guy, Al Capucci. And Al and I hit it off because he understood me and I understood him. He was somewhat out of place and I was out of place, right? And we clicked. Only he was clean. He's clean as a whistle. And he saw something in me. He saw that spark, that work ethic. And he pushed me to sell the business and go to Wall Street, which I resisted for about 4 years, but then ultimately pulled the trigger and went, and it changed my life.
What what was the impetus? What was the one piece that you saw, oh my God, and I'll go to Wall Street? Because I can't picture you, to this day, I can't picture you behind a desk.
Yeah, it was a couple of things. When I really reflect on it over the last few years, I think it was one, he gave me a stock tip and I did really well. And I was like, wow, the pot of gold really is on the other side of the river. But also I think deep down inside, I knew that what was going on in the neighborhood was a dead end and it was wrong. And I was probably a little scared too. I mean, stuff was going down, people were going to jail, and there were people that are dying. So you don't want to admit that. But now, 30 years later, looking back, it was probably a combination of some fear and then and reward.
I like from a spiritual perspective, if I'm looking back at your life, and I always like to pull the golden thread, I can see a lot of steering, whether we call it God, source, universe, inner wisdom, that took you from the neighborhood, took you out of the neighborhood. You were still commuting back and forth, I believe, but then took you one step forward by introducing you to him and pulled you out to actually groom you really for what you're doing today. Everything back then, I believe, led to where you're at now.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. And I think you have to have an open, first of all, I think anybody older, if you're a young person listening to this, wants to help. We all want to help young people. But young people typically don't ask. And when they do ask, they don't listen. And I was different. I don't know why. Maybe because of the preteens having that guy as my main customer and advisor.
I bet you listened like it was life or death.
Yeah, I listened, and my dad was also a pretty powerful guy until he took a turn for the worse financially and then health-wise. But so I had this knack for listening and respecting and following through and returning the favor. And I think it did. I think crossing the river and going to Manhattan did set up everything. But don't forget, it all goes way back to Mom introducing us to that transcendence run, that 3,100-mile run.
So let's go from there. How did you end up leaving Wall Street, and what does a red barn have to do with anything?
Yeah, so I'm sitting on the desk for over a decade, and it's action-packed, and the money's flowing in and flowing out. And I mean, it's like being in a casino with hundreds of thousands of dollars a day flowing through your hands. Really intense, big dinners, and I wasn't planning on being there forever. That was not my plan. I wanted to be on a farm. I don't know why. Yeah. Maybe because of Ithaca, New York, early in those days with my mom. But I had a picture of a red barn on the desk, and I had to get to that barn someday. And I meet my wife, then girlfriend, for 4 weeks, and I pulled the pin, and that was it. Sold the business, found the farm with my wife, and we moved to Vermont, small town Vermont.
How did the town influence you, and what got you? I imagine you wanted to be active again, but what got you thinking about ultra endurance events?
Well, I was already doing those events. Part of my way of remaining sane on Wall Street was Bikram yoga, hot yoga, long distance events, anything I could get my hands on that would help me escape the reality of the intensity of that trading desk and the ups and downs. And plus I was bringing friends and customers out to do that stuff, and we were having fun. And so when I was on the farm, being that I can't sit still, it was very quickly obvious that I had to start inviting people up to the farm and torturing them and getting them to do crazy things.
So what was the death race?
Death race was one of those crazy things. I would have to tell people that they were coming up for a barbecue on the weekend, and they just didn't know that they were the ones being barbecued. Oh, no. And I'd put them through literally hell, chopping wood, crawling through culverts, carrying heavy weights, crawling under barbed wire, just crazy to the point where people broke. And I don't know, maybe in retrospect, talking to you about it right now, but maybe it was a little bit of the neighborhood. It was like, in the neighborhood, you had to go do time and earn your stripes. And so maybe this was just my way of helping people earn their stripes.
Well, I think of there's one gentleman, you have a photo, you have several photos of him at the end of the Spartan Way. A gentleman who was 696 pounds before he came to your farm, and then he was what, like 261 or something in racing, and
Yeah.
you had him earn his stripes.
Oh, he earned more than the stripes. I mean, we were in knockdown, drag out fights, him and I. One day he flipped out on me. He said, "I have to go to the doctor. I have to get my liver levels checked." I said, "You stupid." I said, you were drinking 6 or 7 2-liter Sprites every day and eating 8 Egg McMuffins. Were you getting your liver levels checked then? You're on raw fruits and vegetables and hiking 10 miles a day in the mountains. Like, it was really just pain and suffering and commitment taking a toll on his mind, right? It's easier for all of us to just drink the Sprite and eat the Egg McMuffin.
And it's easier for us, and I'm not picking on him. This is the way we're set up. It's easier for us to use excuses, or to find others who can give us an excuse where I've got to back off. I can't go at this pace. I'm not meant to get in that kind of shape. It's too hard on my body.
No doubt about it.
So let's go from there, and let's talk about the principle of finding your true north. What happened in 2000? It was only 6 months after you quit Wall Street, and you did the Raid International Uke Attack.
That was a nightmare. That was supposed to be a tune-up event. Basically, I joined a 4-person team, and I was the least athletic on the team. I didn't know how to kayak. I didn't know how to ice climb. I didn't know how to rappel. I didn't know anything. But I had some money, and so they were willing to put me on the team as long as I funded the team.
Yeah.
So I got a benefit, and they got a benefit. And I was completely out of my element. We're out in northern Quebec. It is 30 below. And just to go outside to check the gear before the race starts, like, you're frozen. You've been outside for 25 seconds. And I'm being told by my teammates, "Oh, this is just a tune-up. This is going to get us ready for the big race, the dog sled race in Alaska, the Iditarod." And holy shit. I mean, I don't know, 2-3 days into this thing, we are lost and broken. And my teammate, who just got back from Everest, summiting Everest, is telling me this is a serious situation. I'm thinking, if he thinks it's a serious situation, we are effed. So I thought I was going to die out there. But the crazy thing is, I felt alive, if that makes sense. Like,
that makes perfect sense.
Like, I was pushed so far out of my comfort zone that probably the same reason people go rob banks or do, like, there's something really visceral about, right, pushing your limits, right? Your heart is beating and you're sweating and you're nervous and your life's on the line, and you feel alive because I guess every day we kind of live in a greenhouse where everything is temperature controlled and we get watered on demand and everything's perfect. And I was out on the mountain, right? And the wind was blowing and it was pouring rain and the roots were hanging on to the side of a rock, unlike the greenhouse, and it felt good. So I was, although nearly dead,
well,
really
can you
happy.
tell us what happened? You got to the edge of the cliff. The first place team has rappelled down, if I understand, but something happened with the rope.
Yeah. So unbeknownst to me,
Yeah.
I don't know how to rappel, right? And so we're 1,800 feet. I don't know, like, we're pretty high up on top of this mountain. We've been hiking 12 plus hours to get to the top, and we are rappelling off this thing in second place. Somehow we have made it to second place, and the team in front of us had started to rappel down. And normally there's a knot at the end of the rope. So let's say the rope is 200 or 300 foot rope. There's a knot, so you stop and then switch over to the next rope and then rappel another 200 or 300 feet. Well, apparently they forgot to tie the knot, and it wasn't tied into the side of the mountain. So they were dangling and nearly went off the edge. So we had to wait there for I don't know how many hours it was. And finally we decided, you know what? Because we're hallucinating. We're 2 or 3 days into this thing. We haven't slept. We're frustrated because we've been standing on the side of the mountain. We're losing our place. Other teams are starting to appear. We're just going to go off the side of the mountain. It looks like there's some snow there. So poor decision making.
And it was freezing cold.
Freezing
I've got to
cold.
imagine windy. So you're being stripped of whatever energy and heat you have left.
Yeah, so we're not going to go down the way we came up. We're just going to take a shortcut. Well, that leads to literally rolling down this mountain, falling off ledges, hanging from tree branches like you'd see in a cartoon. I mean, 6 or 7 incidents coming down, we should have been dead. And we get to the bottom, thankfully, and we look up and we realize how stupid that was. There was literally a sliver on the side of this mountain that we had just gone down. Let's call it 100 feet wide. But when you went out, 800 feet in one direction, it was all rock cliffs and just fall to your death. But we didn't see that for some reason. We stayed in that 100-foot snowy area and only saw the expanse of how stupid it was that when we got to the bottom. And yeah, I don't. No comment.
Well, there's a lot we can say about life about that, about staying on that narrow path and not veering off. But you came up with a profound statement from that. What's the difference between difficult situations and desperate ones?
The difference between desperate and difficult situations. I don't know exactly what my quote was here, but I will tell you that you do anything when you're desperate, right? You do anything to stay alive. Difficult, you can quit. Desperate is there's no alternatives.
And so you would like to actually take people to as close to desperate as you can so that they can flip that switch to living, to bring it back to whatever they're doing. But you'd like to take them to that edge so that they can see what it means to truly be alive.
I don't think, I think if you and I lived during Lewis and Clark times, we would feel alive every day. And I would probably be making the argument to you right now during this interview that we should have more couches, right? But since we don't live in Lewis and Clark times and we're all living in these little bubbles, these greenhouses, you're right. I want to take people outside the greenhouse and get them into desperate situations and show them how great that feels. Because you're not going to drown in the rain. Now, we probably took it too far. And what I just described, there was some stupidity and their lack of knowledge. But in a controlled situation, for example, the death race, we get you really close. But we're not letting somebody die.
And what's interesting is what you and I are both doing in our own way, and we're both on the same mission here, is you're helping people discover the greatness that's within them, that they are capable of so much more than they ever thought they were possible of, but because we'll call it couch fever, we never know that.
You wouldn't know that. We learn helplessness. Right? Think about it. We're all learning helplessness. I mean, the most simple example for somebody listening is if you can remember a time when your cell phone didn't exist, if you're old enough to remember that, where we didn't have Google Maps and we actually had to go to a store. And if you had the money, buy a map. If you didn't have the money, open it up in the store and try to remember. Like, we used to have that capability. And before that, we actually could use a compass, right? Before that, we could read the stars. Today, we've unlearned all that. And if Siri doesn't give us directions, we are screwed. And that applies to every part of our life.
I'm thinking about my bicycle races growing up, and I grew up just north of Boston, and I would race all the way down through New York City. And to go to a race, part of the adventure and the fear factor was, how in the world am I going to find this thing? I've got a map, I've got an address, there's no internet, I've got 411, but good luck getting an operator to tell me how to get there.
That's right.
You got to find your way.
Got to find your way. My kids recently saw a payphone, and my daughter said, she's 9. I know. You turn the little dial, and it dials a number. And she was fascinated. So, yeah.
I remember by the way, calling my dad, taking a dime, putting it in the payphone. I'm frozen. Water bottle's frozen. It's below zero. I had gone out on a 50 or 100-mile bike ride. I share the same disease as you, Joe. And I'm trying to call my dad to pick me up, and I hallucinated. And I don't even know how I got from A to B to where he finally rescued me, because thank God of the payphone.
I love it. I love it.
Let's go from there. Since we're talking about direction, let's talk about what is our true north.
Well, that's magic. Like if you're able to figure out what your why is in life and the purpose that you're here, which by the way can change, just because you find your why, that thing that just drives you every day that you would do, even if you were failing. Like if you were the worst MMA fighter, the worst wrestler, but every day you went into the gym and got your head pounded in, but you loved it, it's probably your why. You should be doing that every day if you love it that much. I did it with Spartan, 18 years, right? 15 of which we lost money. My head was getting pounded in every day, but I loved it. I love what I was doing. So you find that thing. Doesn't mean it's going to be the thing your entire life, but you chase it and you do it for as long as it is. And what it does is it makes the hard times, which we're all going to face, easy. Easy. We're all going to hit bumps and potholes, and everything that can go wrong is going to go wrong. But if you're doing what you're passionate about, even if you're not great at it, you'll eventually be pretty damn good because you stick with it. And you're going to inspire others because you're going to be passionate about it. And it just feels good.
How did you know? I didn't know that 15 to 18 years you were running in the red. You're bleeding. Your gut has to be twisting inside. You're about making money rather than burning through money. How did you know this is still your why and that you need to keep going?
I didn't know at the time. I know now, looking back and talking to you. At the time, I was questioning myself. But the fact that I stuck with it tells me that I loved it. I was supposed to be doing it. And I love it now. And I think that's how you know. I think that's how you know.
During this time, during this 15 to 18 years, this follows with the True North theme. How did you overcome stinking thinking or negative thoughts that would start to creep up?
I have a really good knack for shutting that down very quickly. And it's probably less about magic and something I could teach and more about the fact that I have ADD. So if you gave me some bad news, within 20 seconds, I forget what the news is and I'm on to something else. So I've probably given myself cues that that's a really powerful, good attribute that I have. And so I use that method, right? Get bad news, forget it, move on. Nothing I could do about it. Just keep moving forward. Because if you dwell on the negative, makes things worse.
Did you journal or daydream or do any process of self-inquiry to check in with yourself?
No, I'm not really a new age guy. My mother pushed all that stuff, but I didn't listen to her on that. So I am, I go to these biohacking conferences and these new age things and I speak and I give the exact opposite messaging than everybody else gives. Yeah, I just have this knack. I put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah.
Somebody said once to me, how do you eat an elephant? I guess I said one bite at a time.
Amen. You do have one writing exercise in your book, though, the importance of writing our own obituary.
Yes, yes. Because, my mother died at a young age. My father died. I saw a bunch of other people die. And I don't know. I don't want to get to the end and not have done what I wanted to do. So I think it's important to do an assessment and say, what are the things, and I'm not talking about a bucket list where you got to go jump out of an airplane or whatever, but like, what are those things you're going to want to be known for? What are those things you're going to want to, and you better get them done because you might not be here tomorrow.
Amen to that. So let's go from there. Let's talk about making a commitment, and we're going to talk a little bit more about life or death. It's an interesting interview today. Why did you go looking for graves while on vacation in Japan with your family?
Yeah. So I heard about these marathon monks
Mount
in
Hiei.
Japan, Mount Hiei. And, when I heard that they do, 100 days, if you and I wanted to become monks there, we would knock on the door and we'd say, all right, we're ready. And they would say, okay, well, take these robes, shave your head, put on these slippers, and go do 100 days of marathon. So you and I would get them done. No big deal. We high five. We're in. Yeah. We sit down with the master, and he says, you got your 100 days done. Good job. You've got 800 more days to go. But this time I want you to take a sword and a rope. And if you decide to quit, either of you, you got to kill yourself on the course. And so that's like exciting to me. Like that's like right on the edge that we spoke about earlier. That's commitment, right? That's just like the guys in the neighborhood, right? Right to the edge. And so I had to bring my family. I had to show my kids, the quitters, and the finishers, the folks that killed themselves on the course, those little round stones, those tombstones, versus the big, beautiful ones that were earned with 900 days of marathons. And we got lost out there because there's no path.
Yeah.
You got to know it, right? You've been doing it for 900 days. You should know the right turns and left turns. But we were just out there, got lost, and we ended up in a cemetery, and the black ravens are flying over us. It's really literally out of a Hitchcock movie. It was kind of surreal. But I think the kids got the message at the end, and we ultimately hoofed our way to a train and got back to Tokyo.
Woohoo! I have that book. In fact, my wife is in a storage. She's the producer of the show. She's in a storage unit getting some of our stuff that made it to the West Coast when we made it to Maui years ago, and included it like a collector's edition of that book, which is not an inexpensive book, but it inspired me. I didn't realize it till now. This is show 1150 in a row.
Wow.
So we're circling that mountain.
Yeah, you are a marathon monk.
I don't have the knife next to me, but by God, every day the show will go live, period. What kind of lesson does that teach you that you have to keep going?
Yeah, I don't know if I don't know if you doing your podcast every day teaches you a lesson, or the marathon monks doing their laps every day teaches you a lesson. I think reflecting back on the completion of those tasks teaches you a lesson, which is nothing great gets done without the work. And at the end of the day, I mean, we've all heard the cliche, right? It's all about the journey, right? It's not getting to the top of the mountain. And for me, I've come to realize it's 99% of it is the work. 1% is the reward. And so, like, if you don't enjoy that whole experience, you're kind of screwed, because again, it's only 1% is when you get to the shore after the swim, or the top of the mountain after the hike, or you get the new robe after the 900 thing, or whatever you're going for with your 1100 podcast, right? Like, it's only a moment in time. And so I think the lesson is you better just enjoy. I mean, look, it goes all the way back to the transcendence run. You better enjoy each lap, 3,100 laps.
And you made a commitment. I'm guessing you've still kept this commitment. Always finish the race.
Always finish. I've failed a few of those. One in particular, I remember, where I thought I had hurt my knee, and I just didn't have enough knowledge to know if I was doing permanent damage. So it ultimately got me to tap out. And when I was sitting in the hotel room for the next 2.5 days while everybody else raced, I thought to myself, holy smokes, time is going to pass, whether I'm out there or I'm in here. I might as well have it pass while I'm out there. Turned out my knee wasn't, in grave danger. I just had a tight IT band. I didn't know. So, and then other times where I've gotten to the brink and wanting to quit, I've had divine intervention. A woman went by with one leg. I was like, if she's doing it, I got to do it. And then you go finish, right? But your mind is tricky, right? Because my mind would say to me, Joe, you've got nothing left to prove. Who cares? You've already finished all these things. What's the big deal? You're not feeling great? Tap out. But that's just your mind testing you.
I did a 5,000-mile, 40-day solo unsupported bike ride across the country a bunch of years ago.
That's a big one.
It was a biggie. I crashed in a tunnel when it sounded like a vehicle was coming from behind. At the same time, there's a booming, echoing RV coming toward me. And my head and the wheels, it was like slow motion out of a movie. I walked out of the tunnel. I'm crying. Bike's partially broken. I felt I had broken at least a thing or two. And I said, are you going to quit? And I said, well, why don't we do this? Let's strap the broken bike parts to the bicycle and see if we can just get into the next town, and then we'll reevaluate from there. So I started playing, and this is something I believe you do, mind tricks on the positive to help me to keep going.
Yeah, I learned along the way something very similar, which was tell myself, you know what? It's okay to quit. I just got to get to that next town. Once I get to the next town, maybe I'll quit then. And that consoles you, makes you feel, you know what? You're right. I don't have to do 4,500 more miles. I just got to get to the next town. And then you get to the next town and you say, God darn it, probably make it to the next town from here. And before you know it, you've gone 5,000 miles.
Amen. What can you tell us about Stephen Pressfield, Gates of Fire, and being pro?
Yeah, he's awesome. He's an author, wrote Gates of Fire, wrote The War of Art.
Yes.
Just an amazing, amazing writer, amazing guy. And his big thing that he taught me was, you want to play life like a pro. You don't want to play like an amateur. And just that sentence really wakes you up, smacks you in the face and says, what would an amateur do right now? Amateur would quit coming out of that tunnel, your bike crash. Pro doesn't quit. Pro straps the bike together and keeps going, right? And in the morning when the alarm goes off at 4:50, what does a pro do? Pro gets up. Amateur goes back to bed. And so it's a handy little tool he taught me. The other thing he said was, Joe, you got to realize every single day we're going to face resistance. For him, he's a writer. Every single day that white sheet is blank and he's trying to figure out what word to put on the white sheet. And he's facing that resistance. And once he came to realize that the resistance is going to exist, with him or without him, just deal with it. Just face the resistance. Just know that it's never going away. It's right to the end. I think when you come to realize that you become okay with it, it becomes easier to deal with.
I like
there's no magic pill that's going to get rid of the resistance. No magic pill that's going to make your podcast a day any easier. It's going to be hard. You're going to have to deal with lunatics like me.
I was thinking I went for a mountain bike ride. I guess it was a mountain bike ride on Sunday. And it'd been raining here in the mountains, raining and snowing all weekend. I can't believe I'm saying that at the beginning of summer. But it was raining and snowing all weekend, Joe. And I'm like, I got to get out. I got to do something. I had run the day before, but I just had to get out. And I'm like, I want to go try out this new trail, but it's 30 minutes away. No, I don't really want to go 30 minutes. I don't really want to go 30 minutes. I said, look, let's just get our stuff to the car. You don't actually have to go anywhere. Just get it to the car, come back in, then maybe put it in the car, come back in. And now let's just drive and see what happens. And I had the most glorious ride because I managed to get myself out. Sort of like Stephen, he got the pen going on the paper, and then he was over the resistance and everything changed.
I agree with that 1,000%. The only bad workout is the one you don't do. I can't even tell you how many. I was just in the UK a week ago. I was exhausted. I had already done my workout in the morning, so check that box. It was done. I didn't owe anything from that perspective. And it was 8 o'clock at night. I had been in the UK office all day, hour differences, ready for bed. A couple of young kids said, oh, we're going to work out. And it really, there was probably 25 seconds that went by. And I said, Joe, don't open your mouth. Don't open your mouth. Don't open your mouth. Screw it. All right, I'm in. Where are we going? And the only reason I did was because of everything we're talking about. And sure enough, the workout was fantastic. Because the only bad one you do is the only bad one is the one you don't do.
Awesome. How do we commit to a goal or begin writing down our promise?
I think you got to commit publicly. I think once you learn that integrity of, listen, if you say something, if you say you're going to bike those 5,000 miles, whether you crash in the tunnel or not, you're going to bike those 5. If you say it, you own it. And so you start to have real integrity around the things you say and the things you commit to. You're not willy-nilly anymore on commitments. And so that's why I hesitated for those 20 seconds about the workout. Like, if you say it, we're going. Are you sure? I'm having that conversation in my own head. So yeah, I mean, when you commit, you gotta burn the boats, just like we talked about with Caesar.
There was a reporter in Las Vegas who was covering my bike ride across the country. And he said that, in Reno. And he said that pretty much everybody makes it down the West Coast, and then somewhere around Reno, they quit. And he actually wrote an article about this guy will never make it. And I told him, and then he was one of the first people I called when I got to DC and I made it. I said, look, if my legs give out, I'm going to take my teeth and bite down on the pedal and use my neck to pull it around. But I am going to make it. And that was the power of a commitment and saying it publicly, and then saying something great will come just out of my making it through this endeavor.
There's no doubt. When I did mine across my rite of passage, I went from, because I didn't know anything about biking across the country, I went from east to west, which is
Oh,
not the way, that's
I'm
not the way
sorry,
you're
man.
supposed to go.
That's called
And
a prevailing headwind.
oh my God. Oh my God, the wind. And in Kansas, oh, anyway.
Awesome, though. Awesome. So,
Yeah.
so let's talk about putting ourselves out there and making a public statement. So, we're going to talk about fueling your enthusiasm. Why would an Irish girl tell you she's going to be cooking eggplant parmesan for you, and then you show up and she's got ski goggles on?
Yeah. So when I met her, she lived in Cambridge in Massachusetts, and I came to visit her apartment, and she wanted to show me, that I guess she could do what my grandmother and my mother and everybody, made eggplants, and they would fry the eggplant in a frying pan. But the oil, you'd hear that garlic and oil sizzling. But she, not being a cook, being Irish, I'm not picking on the Irish, but she thought, gee, I don't want to get burned with the oil. So she was wearing ski goggles. Like if my grandmother was alive, my mother was alive. Yeah, it was like a scene out of The Honeymooners. There's probably a lot of people listening that don't know The Honeymooners, but that was the Seinfeld of what, 60 years ago or 70 years ago.
To the
Um,
moon.
to the moon, Alice. Yeah, imagine walking in on your new girlfriend and she's wearing ski goggles in the kitchen, cooking eggplant. But she definitely won me over.
Woohoo! What can you tell us about Elon? Why do you love Elon Musk so much?
He's just unstoppable. I mean, the press is not always favorable to him. He throws wildly ambitious goals out there publicly. And even if he achieved 50% of them, and I would say his record's even better than 50%, you got to hand it to the guy. Most people don't even try.
It's interesting. I've got a Tesla. We have small investments in Tesla. I think it's either going to do incredibly well or blow up like DeLorean, and time will tell. But he scares people because he goes for it so much.
He goes for it. There's no doubt about it. And he's inspirational, right? Like I think many of us, deep down inside, no matter how passionate we are, no matter how nice we are, no matter how great our moral standards are, we have a little bit of that crab personality where we try to pull the other people down into the boiling pot, right? And so part of you somewhere deep down inside maybe wants to see him fail, but if you could shake that off, that human instinct, don't you wish everybody was like this?
Absolutely.
Imagine what the world would be.
And we have it. The thing is, we have it inside of us. How do we bring that out? How do we fuel our enthusiasm?
For me, first of all, the first thing I look for when I'm hiring somebody is that enthusiasm, right? That's somebody you want to be around. That is giving energy, not taking energy. And so for me, I'm not always feeling enthusiastic. You certainly weren't feeling enthusiastic coming out of the tunnel on that bike ride, but you smile, you fake it, right? You think of something positive. And before you know it, it becomes contagious throughout your body. And you start to have gratitude towards the sun coming up or the fact that it's not raining. I'll say to myself, well, it could be worse. I could be in Siberia right now. And then if it gets really cold, I'll say, well, it could be worse. I could be, without oxygen, right? And I keep going down the list. And even if it keeps getting worse and I keep running out of things, I'll finally say, well, I could be dead, right? And I'm not dead. So you make the best of it.
There's I'm going to get her name. Her name is escaping me. 103-year-old woman. She just won the 100-meter dash for the Senior Olympics, representing the U.S. And she just started running 3 years ago. And
Wow.
She says every day started running at 100.
I love it.
And she says every day is a gift. And she goes, I don't do any real training. I run everywhere.
I love it. I love it. And that's all you need. That's all you need, right? There's been some times I trained for a 100-mile run that way. I just said, I'm just going to run everywhere I go. I'm not going to do any formal runs. Yeah. But if I run a half mile, it'll just add up every day.
And I like to say that I run lately the way I drive the car, which is little pulses, bursts of speed. You can only get to so fast. So you burst of speed, then you got to go slow down for the turn. Then you burst again.
That's right.
But you're building and building. So let's talk about embracing adversity and talking about building. Do you still carry a 46-pound kettlebell with you wherever you go?
Do you want me to go get it?
Yeah, if it's close by, I'd love to see this thing.
Hang on, let's take a walk. Hopefully my phone, let me carry my phone with me since it is tethered. Hang on a second. Took it to Chicago today.
It makes me think of Wilson the volleyball. Does it have a name?
Leo.
Leo.
Leonidas.
Like the lion.
Hang on a second. All right, let's see here. We got Leo. Hang on.
46, I guess that's the limit for the airplane.
There we go. Can you see me?
Yeah, I see you holding Leo on your shoulder there.
Got Leo, hang on.
Now I've got the ceiling, but that's all right.
How's that?
So I want to talk about what this means for you. But before I do that, I've got to ask the question everybody else is thinking. What does TSA say when you go and you put a 46-pound kettlebell in the X-ray?
So it depends on the TSA employee. And it's become really difficult for me. I think I've lost 3 of them in the last month. And so if you're me, around 50% of the time, TSA lets it go through. And I've had TSA folks that are really diligent, and they've gone through the manual, and they say it's under 50 pounds, it's allowed. And so then I gain confidence.
Yeah.
Because once I commit and I walk past the ticket counter and I get on the long line to go through TSA, and now I'm 25 minutes into this thing, and I've taken my computer out of my bag and my shoes off and my belt off, and I've put everything through, and it comes out the other side, and they say, you can't bring this on. And now I've only got 15 minutes to get to my flight. I got to make a decision. Do I give another kettlebell to TSA or do I go back? Well, today I went back. Today I had enough time to go back and let this baby through. But it's 50-50. Now, I've carried them to over 100 countries, and it depends on the country. China lets it on the plane, no problem. In most of the Middle Eastern countries, they have a saying which means it's up to God whether or not the kettlebell will be on the other side when I land. In India, they stick the kettlebell typically in someone else's suitcase, believe it or not, and tell me to get it out of their suitcase when I get to the other side. In Japan, they wrap it perfectly in bubble wrap and inside of a box. And very petite woman, typically, that works behind the counter will take that perfectly wrapped 45-pound kettlebell and then carry it with high heels a quarter mile in the airport and put it carefully in on one of the belts. In the U.S., if I check it in, they just throw it on the belt and it bounces down and usually dents everything and bounces right off. They care less. So yeah, it's been interesting. Boston, Boston, they steal them.
They steal them in Boston.
They steal them in Boston. It's the only city I've been to where they just continually disappear.
I wonder if it's the same guy or if there's a whole group that's getting their 46-pound kettlebell so that they can have their circuit training together. CrossFit.
Yeah. Today there was a guy actually filming the kettlebell coming around the turnstile, which I thought was funny, and I should have filmed him filming it, I thought, after I left. The significance is when that guy you mentioned earlier, I was helping him lose weight. I was carrying weight as he lost weight to help motivate him. And when I got to a 100-pound sandbag, it became pretty significant for me to carry around a 100-pound sandbag. And my family and I moved to Asia. And in that move, I was going through TSA and they confiscated my 100-pound sandbag. So when I landed in Asia, I said to my wife, would you mind ordering a kettlebell online, because I'm kind of getting used to carrying around weight, but I'm not going to carry 100 pounds. It's ridiculous. Why don't you give me a 20-pound kettlebell? It'll be easy. I can travel with it. by accident, she ordered a 20 kg kettlebell because we're in Asia. And so me being who I claim to be on the internet and interviews like this with you, I couldn't possibly return a 20-pound kettlebell or 20 kg kettlebell and replace it with a 20-pound. I figured if somebody at Amazon knew who I was, I'd be screwed. So I stuck with it. And this has been my thing.
So you're still living over in Asia then?
Moved back September. Living in Boston now.
Very cool. So where exactly were you in Asia?
I lived in Singapore for a year, Tokyo for a year, and then we lived in Vancouver for a year, and now we're in Boston.
What brought you home?
Happy Queen, Happy Kingdom, my wife.
Amen to that. Woohoo!
Yeah. Not necessarily Happy King, Happy Kingdom.
No. I have to agree. It certainly goes this way in our family. If the mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
That's right. That's right.
I do a journaling process called automatic writing each morning where you kind of tune into your higher self. You write freehand. And at the end, you always ask, what's my single-minded purpose? The most important thing I can do today. 9 out of 10 times, it says, take better care of the wifey.
I love it.
Almost every single time, and that makes us happy. So let's talk a little bit about taking care of ourselves. There's a 1955 study, 698 children born on the Hawaiian island of Kauai. What can you tell us about this, and how'd that influence you?
That's a great question. For me, I don't know. I'm drawing a blank. Fill me in.
So it was these kids were vulnerable but invincible. In fact, the kids who grew up underprivileged ended up becoming the stronger ones, where you would think they're weaker. They don't have the good diet. They don't have the good resources, but they became stronger. And that's, in essence, I think, part of what you're teaching people in the Spartan races.
It's funny. I think today I was having a conversation. I was in Chicago, and I was having a conversation with a gentleman who's very wealthy. Picked me up from the airport with my kettlebell in a Mercedes coupe. I'd never been in the new. It was awesome. I have to admit, for a guy that tells people to just run everywhere, it was awesome. I mean, as he went around turns, they look cool. And he said to me, and I hope I'm not speaking out of turn for him, but he said to me, we're pretty well to do, and we've got a nanny, and we took care of our kids, and the kids are pretty spoiled. And so the thing that study references, and the thing I think about each and every day, because we have 4 children, is a huge correlation between success and actually coming from hard times. I think it's our job to put obstacles in front of the kids. And, I don't know if that study in Hawaii really confirms that, because I don't know, it's a delicate balance, right? If you looked at a bunch of kids that grew up in a really tough neighborhood, they don't end up necessarily in large percentages as CEOs of major corporations but invariably, when I talk to people that have made it to the top, and it obviously depends how you define the top, but let's say in industry, you always hear of a tough. It's actually rare that you hear they grew up in really privileged households, right? That's the that occurs less of the time. So I would think, and stay with me here. Yeah. That when you come from nothing and you struggle, you probably appreciate more. I was in Fiji, and I was around people that had no TVs, no cars, no money. They were happy as can be. They were happy, they were fulfilled, they were getting their stuff done, they were focused. And yet Gloria Vanderbilt, who was just written up in the New York Times a few days ago, her son jumped off a building, had everything, right? Billionaire. So I don't know. I don't know if I answered the question or not, but I think about that actually all day, every day. And, whether you're talking about the marshmallow test or the study in Hawaii, there's people that refute those studies. You get the other side of them. But in my own anecdotal evidence of just talking to lots of people, I don't know if you agree or not, the hard way seems to be the right way.
If you plant a seed and you don't tamp down the soil, it can't grow and can't grow strong roots. It needs to have resistance in
I like that.
order to grow strong. Has
I
to.
like that a lot. I like that a lot. That's good. But I guess what I was saying was, you've also got to take your foot off the soil, right? Maybe in many of the environments, there's just too much resistance.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
And well, it's always got to be a balanced middle road.
Yep.
Or else you're going to be, if the resistance is too great, if we put, instead of taking this gentleman who's 690 pounds and 10 miles a day, if you said, I'm going to have you walk 100 days straight for a marathon, he's done before he begins.
Yes.
Have to find that middle way. There's a challenge that was interesting to me because it's so scary for people. And I imagine it was an OF moment to you, but it helps adjust our frame of reference. Going blind in Japan.
That was a disaster. Yeah, I woke up one morning, day after my birthday, and I couldn't see, and I had no idea what it was. And my wife rushed me to a Japanese hospital, which I ended up spending 30 days in. And turns out I had a stroke. Turns out I had been flying and traveling for 100 hours the past, 7, 8, 9 days. Probably created a clot in one of my legs because I'm so damn stoic that I would just fight through sitting on a plane for 14 hours, right, and doing the stupid things. Was dehydrated, we think, and a tiny little hole exists in my heart. 20% of the world have these holes. They don't completely close when we're born the way they should. However, we don't know we have those holes until an incident like this might occur. And that tiny little clot apparently jumped over during one of my 44 million beats that year and went up into a tiny little artery, a little vein in my head, in the midbrain, and shut my eyes down. And so going to the hospital, thank God there was a young doctor in there that overruled the older, more experienced doctor who in Japanese was saying, oh, he's just stressed out, send him home. Yeah. And they quickly threw me on some blood thinners and then proceeded to spend the next 30 days trying to figure out what had happened. And that was the conclusion we came to. And so for those 30 days, I created my own protocol of what I was going to eat, what I was going to do, stand on my head, ice cold showers, workout, burpees, with all the wires and the tubes and everything attached to me.
What was your fundamental thinking? Because I'm thinking life is movement, movement is life. What was going through your head?
I have to get blood flow. I gotta keep the blood moving. I gotta keep blood thin. That was it. I mean, that's all I knew. I'm not a doctor. Yeah. I couldn't. They didn't have answers. I didn't have answers. But I knew that if my blood was moving, that was better than not. So they had said, look, we see a little part of your brain died, right? And you could see the speck on the MRI. And that was in Japan. When I got to Singapore 30 days later, and they looked on the MRI, they said, oh, wow, it's gone. I guess that part of your brain regrew. So the only thing I could attribute it to was my protocol, my insane protocol, what I did in the hospital every day.
What was your mindset during that time?
I was crying. First 4 days, I was crying because, I remember thinking like, this doesn't happen to me, but nobody gets out alive.
And what kept you going?
I guess everything I preach, I guess, and I got kids, and I get really maniacal about fixing, and so I wanted to fix it.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to give myself the best possibility of coming through.
What do you think your kids got out of it? other than scared as
I don't.
hell?
No, I don't know if they. I don't know if they were. My wife was pretty broken, but I don't know. I don't know if they got scared. Too young.
Well, that's a good thing then. What is it?
Yeah.
What does it mean? Because we're talking about mindset. We're talking about what got you through it. What does it mean to live the Spartan way?
I think about that every day too. I think it means like it doesn't mean you have to come out and do a Spartan race, but I think it means you've got to, you said it earlier. You've got to drive that car on the track until the wheels fall off. You got to give it everything you got because the last thing I want to hear, and I think the last thing you're going to want to say at the end of the day was you wish you did more of this, or you wish you pushed a little harder, right? Like, there's no way you and I, Michael, would sit at the end of our lives and say, man, I wish we watched more TV. Not going to happen. Nobody's going to say that.
Yeah.
Everybody's going to say they wish they did more. They pushed harder. They tried harder. And so to live the Spartan way is to have none of those regrets, to burn the boats, right? Like Caesar, to not lose a man like Shackleton,
Mhm.
um, to get to the top of the mountain like Hillary. So,
What advice would you give to kids, or actually to parents for their kids today?
that's why I said we were talking about that today, and I think you're going to be faced with choices each and every day, just like I am as a parent, and I'm hard and I'm easy. Like, you know what I mean? I think I'm hard. I try to push up, but I'm too easy, and so I think really hard choices in life make for an easier life. Like every other animal in the animal kingdom trains their cub to be ready for the wild. And so are we training our cubs to be ready for the basement? What are we training them for? We want them to get outside and live their own life. And, there's a great saying in Sparta that used to exist for the kids. And it was basically to be better. Their job was to be better than the previous generation. So that's what we're supposed to do.
Awesome. What brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
Oh, my wife and my kids and my wife and my kids and this.
Lifting up Leo there. Excellent. Where can people go to find out more and to find your books?
Yeah, go to Spartan.com. Check us out. Anybody could always shoot me an email, joe@spartan.com. Everybody's invited to the farm anytime they want to come and work and find out, who they are. I'm happy to put them through the paces. Um, get the book, Spartan Way, Spartan Up, Spartan Fit, Spartan. Happy to send you books. Happy to give you free races, whatever you want. I'm here to help people. That's not, although we do need to remain viable and we want to make money. That's not first and foremost. So, yeah.
Awesome. Well, what fires you up each day?
I guess I just like to fight. I like to fight. As much as I don't like to wake up to challenges, I think the challenges inspire me to get after it. I think deep down inside, you probably like the crashing in the tunnel more than those downhills.
Well, it's interesting because I got tired on this. I sprint up the mountain and down before we met here, and I tripped and fell. Not a big deal. Scraped my hands up a little bit. Not a big deal. But I was actually learning because my right leg has a dead spot in it that I'm learning about. I'll call it dead spot, meaning there's something that I get to work on that only shows itself when pushed near the limit. So I can either go, that was really stupid of me to trip and fall, but that's not how I view it. I'm going, wow, something revealed itself to me that I get to work on now.
That's right. That's right. And so it's all perspective, isn't it? It's the way you frame the thing that's coming at you. And
Absolutely.
if you frame it the way you just did, all of a sudden obstacles become downhills.
Woohoo! Any last words of wisdom before we let you get some rest after your flight, after your travels today? And thanks so much for being here today.
Here's my favorite new quote. Happiness is wanting what you have. It's a good one.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And that is everything. It's a reframing, it's awareness, it's the works.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for being here today, Joe. Greatly, greatly appreciate it. Thank you for going and getting Leo. Would it be Leo the fourth? I don't know, Leo, which number?
Oh yeah, this is Leo, probably the Leo the 14th. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get the Spartan way, and begin living a limitless life today. And shine bright. Woohoo!
Shine bright, Thanks for doing that, and I'm sorry I drove you crazy for a month.
It was all worth it. I couldn't help but be incredibly inspired by Joe De Sena's Spartan Way interview. To be even more inspired, click here, subscribe below.